Hello everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, we're diving into a jaw-dropping twist. Lynn just secured massive control through a secret share deal, while Tu Tieu is shut out at her own mother's door, and the truth may be buried in a fake DNA test. If you enjoy the story, don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss the next episode. The meeting room was bright, cold, and too quiet. The kind of place where people pretend life-changing decisions are just business. A glass table, a wall clock ticking like it wanted attention. Papers stacked so neatly they looked harmless. Ngok sat with a thick folder in front of him. Across from him was the recipient, the one about to become the biggest shareholder. Lynn sat slightly to the side, posture relaxed, but her eyes kept cutting toward the door like she didn't trust the hallway. Ngok slid the folder forward. 55% of the shares, he said, as agreed. The recipient stared at the number, swallowed, then picked up the pen. One signature, another, a stamp pressed down. Ink spread across the page like a thin, irreversible shadow. Lynn leaned in, voice soft. "Congratulations," she said. It didn't sound warm, it sounded final. Gosh turned his phone screen so the recipient could see it. Now. The recipient entered the transfer amount with careful, shaking precision. Tap. Confirm. A vibration broke the silence. Bank notification. 50 billion VND transferred. 50 billion. For a second, nobody moved. Not because they were celebrating, because they were listening for consequences. Ngok finally exhaled. "All right," he said. "We've crossed the line." He pulled the signed documents back toward himself and tapped them into a clean stack. Next steps. We stabilize operations, build credibility, and if things go well, we bring the overseas projects back, grow the company, bring in new members. The recipient nodded fast, excitement rising, then slipping into anxiety. "I need help," they admitted. "I'm holding the biggest shares, but I don't have the experience. If I mess up, everything collapses." Lynn tilted her head, playing supportive. "That's why we're building a structure," she said. "You won't be alone." The recipient turned to the other person in the room, the founder, the one who built the company from nothing. "You should be director," the recipient said. "You're the founder. People trust you. Partners trust you. Staff trust you." The founder didn't look pleased. He looked burdened. His gaze stayed on the papers, like he could already see them turning into headlines if the plan failed. When he finally spoke, his voice was deep and measured. "If I take the director role," he said, "it's not for status. It's because I'm tied to this company. I built it. I know the risks, and I know what happens when leadership shakes." He looked at the recipient, blunt. "Large shares with little experience is dangerous. The market smells fear. Competitors smell hesitation. If you panic, we all pay." The recipient swallowed. "I won't panic," they said, more promise than confidence. Ngok nodded once. Lynn's smile stayed perfectly controlled. "And I remain vice director," Lynn added smoothly, like it was already written into the room. "I can handle internal operations and support the director." Ngok raised a brow. "And me?" "You stay," the recipient said quickly. "An employee role for now. Guidance, transition. You know the system. We need that." Ngok's eyes flickered. "Fine," he said. "But if I'm inside, I'm watching everything." More signatures, more pages turned. The deal looked clean on paper, but the atmosphere said otherwise. Fragile power, transferred fast, like handing someone a loaded weapon, and hoping they learned safety rules later. When it was done, the founder stood. "We commit," he said. "Full effort. No half measures. Because failure here doesn't just cost money, it costs people's livelihoods." The meeting ended with polite handshakes that felt like contracts. Chairs scraped, folders closed. Smiles appeared and disappeared. In the hallway, Lynn tugged at her blazer collar and muttered, "I still can't believe it happened so easily." The founder didn't laugh. "Easy is usually the part that kills you later," Lynn's voice dropped. "Don't congratulate me early. Mrs. Nguyen's son is skilled, and his connections are wide. If he senses anything, he'll dig until he finds the rot." The founder's jaw tightened. "Then we move carefully." We move smart, Lynn corrected, and the word smart sounded sharp. And we planned for Yuri. Just hearing the name changed the air. Yuri wasn't here, but he was the kind of person who could ruin a scheme just by noticing one wrong document, one wrong timeline. If Yuri finds out, Lynn continued, he'll destroy this. He knows too much. The founder hesitated, then nodded. Then we devise the plan ourselves. We contact who we need to contact, and we keep our distance from anyone who can expose us. Lynn glanced around again, paranoia tightening her shoulders. We leave. Now. I don't want Mrs. Ngia catching our shadows. She stopped, then added, transfer me some spending money. I'll need cash to move around. The founder looked irritated but pulled out his phone. Another transfer. Another silent confirmation. Good, Lynn said, lips curving into something that wasn't a smile. Now we disappear. They walked away in opposite directions like strangers, because in dirty alliances, even allies don't want to be seen together. And in the elevator mirror, Lynn's reflection didn't look like a winner. It looked like someone holding a crown, and realizing it came with knives. At the farm, the world felt warmer. Soil, sunlight, and the small sounds of real life. Yuri still hadn't returned yet. Tuong greeted Ly Tu Tieu near the yard and pointed toward the fence. Look! A flower garden bloomed in tidy rows, bright colours swaying in the breeze. Yuri planted that, Tuong said. He loves flowers. He says they remind him people can still choose gentleness. Ly Tu Tieu's expression softened, then broke again. My mother won't even see me, she whispered. Tuong's face turned serious. I think I know why she said you're not her daughter. Ly Tu Tieu froze. Why? The old fisherman, Tuong said. He met your mother at the farm. He told her he's your father, and it triggered a misunderstanding. Her chest tightened. That? Why would he say that? I think he thought your mother came to harm him, Tuong explained. Or he confused her with someone else. Remember, someone impersonated her before. The old man might be carrying old fear. Ly Tu Tieu stared at the flowers, but the colours blurred. So my mother believed it, she said, voice shaking, and she shut me out. Or someone used that fear, Tuong replied carefully. Ly Tu Tieu didn't need a name. Lynn. Tuong nodded. If Lynn faked a DNA result, she can control your mother, seize assets, and cut you off. She can make your mother depend on her, Ly Tu Tieu swallowed hard. Then we retest, she said. A real DNA test, from a place Lynn can't touch. Tuong stepped closer. First, try to meet your mother privately, without Lynn. She won't open the door, Ly Tu Tieu said, but she was already moving, determination replacing pain. They reached the mother's house. The gate was closed. The silence felt deliberate. Footsteps, a latch. The door cracked open, and Lynn appeared, blocking the entrance like she owned it. Lynn's hand stayed on the edge of the door like a lock. Her smile came first, sweet, practiced, almost gentle, but her eyes were sharp, measuring. Tu Tieu, she said, like she was greeting a guest who showed up uninvited. Why are you here again? Ly Tu Tieu tried to look past her toward the dark hallway inside. I'm here to see my mother, she said. Her voice was calm, but it shook at the edges. Move aside. Lynn didn't move. Instead, she leaned her shoulder against the frame as if she belonged there. She doesn't want to see you, Lynn replied. You already know that. Tuong stepped forward, tone firmer than Tu Tieu's. We're not here to argue. We're here to clear the misunderstanding. Lynn let out a small laugh that didn't match her face. Misunderstanding, she echoed. You mean the part where she found out Tu Tieu isn't her daughter? Tu Tieu's stomach tightened. That's not found out. That's what you told her, Lynn's smile sharpened. Careful, she warned softly. Don't accuse me without proof. Tuong lifted his chin. The old fisherman told her he was Tu Tieu's father. That's what triggered everything, right? For the first time, Lynn's eyes flickered. Just a tiny crack. Then she covered it with a sigh. That old man is dangerous, she said. He's confusing her. He's poisoning her mind. Tu Tieu's fingers curled. Or someone poisoned her mind before he even opened his mouth. Lynn's gaze snapped to Tu Tieu. "Stop talking like that," she hissed, but quickly lowered her voice again. "You don't understand what you're doing." "What I'm doing," Tu Tieu said, "is trying to speak to my mother without you standing between us." Lin's expression turned serious, almost offended. "I'm protecting her," she said. "She's been through enough. You keep showing up, you keep pushing, and she keeps shaking like she's about to break." Tuong didn't blink. "Then let her hear the truth and decide." Lin tilted her head. "Truth?" she repeated. "Fine, here's truth." She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded document, held it up like a weapon. "DNA test," Lin said. "From the hospital. Official." Tu Tieu stared at it, her chest burning. "You won't even let me hold it," she said. "Because you'll tear it," Lin shot back. "Or claim it's fake, or twist it into another fight." Tu Tieu took a step closer, voice rising despite her effort. "Then show me the original. Show me the hospital stamp. Show me the full report, not a folded page you can hide behind." Lin's lips pressed into a thin line. "You want the original?" she said. "Sure." Then her tone shifted, sly, transactional. "But I need something from you too." Tuong's brows drew together. "What?" Lin tapped the paper with her nail. "I'm going to sue," she said. "For harassment, for threats, for everything your people have been doing. I need money for legal fees, or at least I need you to lend me something valuable, documents, proof, anything I can use." Tu Tieu's eyes widened. "So that's it," she whispered. "You're not defending my mother. You're building a trap." Lin's smile returned, smaller now. "I'm surviving," she said. "Unlike you, I don't have the luxury to play hero." Tuong's voice was cold. "We're not lending you anything." Lin shrugged. "Then don't ask for favours." Tu Tieu took a breath, forcing herself steady. "No favours," she said. "Let's do it properly. We retest. Another DNA test. Independent. You can be there. I can be there. My mother can see the result with her own eyes." For a second, Lin didn't respond. She looked like she was calculating the risk, like she was flipping options in her head, searching for the one that kept her in control. Then she nodded slowly. "Fine," Lin said. "Retest." But immediately her face softened, voice dropping into a plea. "Just don't ruin my job," she added quickly. "Don't report me. Don't spread rumours. I'm the one feeding your mother right now." Tu Tieu's heart twisted at the words. Feeding your mother. Not our mother. Your mother. Like Tu Tieu was already being pushed out of the family with language alone. Before Tu Tieu could answer, a sound came from inside, a slow shuffle, a door opening, and then she appeared. Mrs. Lan stood in the hallway, half hidden by shadow, eyes tired, face tight like someone holding pain in her jaw. Her gaze landed on Tu Tieu, and instead of warmth, there was fear. Tu Tieu's throat closed. "Mum," she said softly. Lin moved fast, stepping in front of Tu Tieu's line of sight. "Mom!" Lin cried, voice suddenly breaking. "They came again!" Mrs. Lan's eyes darted between them, confused and overwhelmed. Why are you here?" she asked, but her voice wasn't asking. It was pleading for the noise to stop. Tu Tieu stepped forward, hands open. "Mum, listen to me." Lin dropped to her knees, right there on the doorstep. The movement was dramatic, loud, impossible to ignore. "Mum, please," Lin sobbed. "They're threatening me. They want to destroy me. They keep saying I forged things. Mom, I would never." Tu Tieu froze, stunned by how fast Lin turned the scene into a theatre. Mrs. Lun's face tightened like she'd been struck. "Enough," she whispered. Tu Tieu tried again, voice shaking. "Mum, she's lying. We can retest." "Stop!" Mrs. Lan snapped. The word hit like a slap. Her eyes were wet, angry, torn. But when she looked at Tu Tieu, the pain twisted into something sharper. "Why can't you just leave us alone?" she demanded. "Why do you keep coming here to hurt her?" Tu Tieu's mouth opened, but no words came out. Her chest felt hollow. Tuong stepped forward, respectful. "Auntie, we're not here to hurt anyone. We just want you to hear." Mrs. Lan raised her hand. "I don't want to hear," she said. "I'm tired. I'm sick of fighting. If you care about me, you will stop." Tu Tieu's eyes burned. "Mum, I care about you so much that I can't stand watching someone use you." Lynn's sobs grew louder, drowning her. "Mum, they're calling me a thief," Lynn cried. "They want to take everything from us." Mrs. Lan looked like she was drowning in noise and choosing the closest hand, Lynn's, because it was the one already gripping her. "Go," Mrs. Lan said to Tu Tieu, voice low but final. "Leave. Don't come back." Tu Tieu stood there like the ground had disappeared under her feet. She wanted to argue, to beg, to grab her mother's hand and shake her awake. But her mother's eyes avoided hers, like looking at Tu Tieu hurt too much. So Tu Tieu turned. Each step away from the door felt like walking out of her own childhood. Behind her, Lynn's voice followed, soft now, satisfied. "Mum," Lynn murmured, "we should sell this house, move far away, somewhere they can't find us, somewhere quiet." Tu Tieu's fists clenched as she walked, because she understood exactly what Lynn was doing. Isolation, control, erasing. Outside the gate, Tu Tieu's shoulders finally collapsed. The air felt colder than it had a minute ago. Tuong caught up beside her. "Tu Tieu," he said gently, "don't blame yourself. She's trapped in fear." Tu Tieu wiped her cheek with the back of her hand, angry at the tears. "She chose Lynn," she whispered. "She chose her over me again." "She chose the story that hurts less," Tuong replied. "That doesn't mean it's true." Tu Tieu stared at the ground. "What if I can't fix it?" she asked, voice cracking. "What if Lynn wins because she knows exactly how to press the right wounds?" Tuong's expression hardened. "Then we stop playing defense," he said. "We get facts. We get the retest. We find out what Lynn did at that hospital. And we bring the truth to your mother, quietly, privately, without giving Lynn a stage." Tu Tieu nodded, but her eyes were still haunted. "Uri should be here," she whispered. "He'd know what to do." As if the name summoned him, footsteps sounded from the path. Uri finally appeared at the farm later that day, shoulders tense, face worn from meetings. His tie was loosened, his expression that look of someone trying to build a future while the past keeps grabbing his ankle. He saw Tu Tieu and immediately softened. "I met the partners," he said, voice tired but steady. "It wasn't easy, but we're still moving." Then his eyes drifted to the table. Sticky rice cakes, finished. Some already wrapped, some missing, sold. He blinked. "You made them?" Tu Tieu nodded, forcing a small smile through the ache. "We did. The kids helped." Uri walked closer like the smell pulled him. Ginger, molasses, warm rice. Comfort in the middle of chaos. He picked one up carefully, broke it open, steam curling up like a memory. He took a bite, and his whole face shifted. For a second, he wasn't a man fighting contracts and betrayal. He looked like a kid again. "It's chewy," he said quietly, almost stunned. "And the ginger hits after. Then the sweetness. Like my mum used to make." Tu Tieu watched him, the sadness in her chest loosening just a little. "It tastes like home," she said. Uri nodded slowly, eyes distant. "Yeah," he whispered. "It does." Then he looked up like he remembered the audience sitting right there with them. His voice warmed, inviting. "If you've ever eaten something that brings you back to childhood, you know how powerful that is," he said. "Tonight we're eating these together, and no matter how messy life gets, do we keep going." He took another bite, then glanced at Tu Tieu, gentle but determined. "We'll fix what's broken," he said, low enough for her alone. "One truth at a time." And as the warm cakes disappeared bite by bite, the farm felt like a shelter again. Small, fragile, but real. "Thanks for staying with us," Uri said to the viewers, voice steady now. "If you're still here, you're part of this journey. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you in the next episode." In a tense meeting room, a massive share transfer goes through. 55% of the company changes hands, and 50 billion VND is wired in a heartbeat. The new majority owner admits they lack experience, so the founder is pushed into the director role while Lynn remains vice director, quietly positioning herself behind the scenes. but the victory feels dangerously too easy, and Lin warns that Mrs. Nghia's well-connected son, and especially Yuri, could expose everything if they discover the scheme. Meanwhile, Tu Tieu arrives at her mother's house hoping to clear the growing misunderstanding, only to find Lin blocking the door and controlling the narrative. Tu Tieu proposes a new DNA retest, but Lin plays the victim and Mrs. Lan angrily forces Tu Tieu to leave. Heartbroken, Tu Tieu leans on Tuong until Yuri returns, bringing a brief moment of warmth through homemade sticky rice cakes.